Okay, so just to get things started, we have a lot in store today for you guys. Um, Today we have Dr. Sarah Kissiwaa and Dr. Antoinette Foster joining us from OHSU, Oregon Health Science University. These are two fantastic people who I met when I was a postbac student, and they were great mentors to me. And so I think, this webinar is going to be super beneficial. When I was applying to grad school, one thing that tripped me up a little bit was how to write a diversity statement. That can be a little tricky, so I'm really happy that you guys will have the opportunity to hear from them both today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Foster and Dr. Kissiwaa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to drop a link in the chat for you to follow along with us in the document that we're going to be using. And so we're going to start off with just a little introduction about who Sarah and I are and kind of what brings us into this space. And then we'll get into more of the nuts and bolts of the outline of what we're going to talk about today. And then also the how you write these DEI statements. And so, again, my name is Antoinette Foster. I went to school at Oregon Health and Science University and graduated from their neuroscience graduate program. I got my PhD 3 or 4 years ago. I was in your position about 7 years, or I guess now 10 years ago, trying to figure out which universities I want to apply to and how to write to the application that they're asking me for. And so during my time in graduate school, I spent a lot of time doing equity work, and I was able to kind of formalize that position in the university. And that now I run a racial equity and inclusion center that's really focused on the neuroscience graduate program that I graduated from. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about admissions, thinking about helping students get into universities or into graduate programs. And so we're really happy to be able to share what we've learned throughout that journey with you today. And I'm also joined on this call by Sarah Kissiwaa, and so I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. We're really excited to be here. My name is Sarah Kissiwaa. I am from Sydney, Australia. I did my PhD in Australia, so I didn't have to do the things that you all have to do here. We don't have diversity statements. We don't have a formal like mechanism for applying to grad school like you do in the US. But I do think that these additions that the US has is of benefit. So I'm really excited to be here. Most of the stuff that I know about equity has been learned through working with Antoinette within the Racial Equity and Inclusion Center. So I'm really excited to share some of what we've learned over the years and how to help you all with your DEI statements.
All right, y'all. So the doc that we put into the chat, you don't have to worry about copying it over. We're going to send you a copy after the session's over, and we'll keep popping it into the chat for new folks that join. And so we really try to kind of stay a little bit away from lectures. We try to do more of these collaborative docs. And so we'll take notes in here. You can take notes in here, and then we'll end up sharing this with everyone in the end. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about, first off, what do universities even mean when they say the word diversity? We're going to talk about the difference between individual identities and how that relates to systems of oppression, and then how that even relates to DEI statements. We're going to walk through, sometimes it's really difficult when you're writing these DEI statements to figure out, like, what is it that makes me diverse outside of maybe some of the more obvious things. And so we're going to talk about kind of all of the things that make us diverse and that we can offer a university or program. And then we're going to talk about kind of what types of DEI statements are out there. There's maybe kind of like 3 main categories that you might run across when you're doing your graduate applications. And so how do you write to each one of them is going to be what we talk about. And then there'll be some time in the end for Q&A. You can, if you have questions as we're going through the sessions, you can just pop it into the chat, and then we'll try to get to that at the end. So launching straight into what are universities, and I'm thinking it might be maybe easier if I share my screen with folks. So let me do that. You can either have the doc pulled up or you can just look at the screen that we're going to share. And so, what do universities mean when they say diversity? Universities are generally referring to this word diversity to talk about the variety of identities and backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives that individuals can bring to the academic environment. We usually think about diversity in terms of things like race, ethnicity, country of origin. We think about things maybe like disability or physical differences, and that can include like cognitive, mental health differences, chronic health conditions. We think about it in terms of gender or sexual orientation, socioeconomic background. So really we're talking about money, religion, culture. These are kind of the things that we generally think about when it comes to what are the ways that I can be diverse. But there are also some other things that you can also consider including. And so, because we're broadening it out to this concept of life experiences, learning, working styles, and personality types, this could include age or your life stage. So, if you are going into a graduate program and you are a little bit older, or you have kids, or you're having to take care of elderly parents, things like if you're married or divorced, all of these different things can give you perspective that might be different than most of the folks that you're going to school with. And so that's what we're thinking about, or what are the experiences or perspectives that I might have that's different than other folks that I'll be going to school with. Things like your professional or educational background. So the type of field that you worked in before you got into neuroscience. So work experience, vocational experience. These are the types of things that might give you a different perspective. Same thing with geographic location. Where you grew up in the region of the world might be different, or other personal experiences like immigration, military service, trauma, political ideologies, hobbies, interest. All of these things are things that might make us a little different or have a different perspective than those around us. And so when we think about it, generally what these statements are looking for is they are asking about like 3 to 4 categories: our experiences that might be different or make us unique, our personal identities, or they're trying to connect our experiences and personal identities to larger systems of inequities, which in this conversation we're going to refer to as systems of oppression. So when we're talking about systems of oppression, we're talking about systems that are discriminatory institutions, structures, norms, policies, and practices that are embedded into our society and used to oppress groups of people. You're familiar with these systems of oppression, you've heard of them before. Some of the prompts are asking you to talk about personal experience. Some of them are asking you to talk about these larger systems. So it's important to kind of like understand the relationship between our individual identities and the systems in which those individual identities are found within. So what do we mean by that? For instance, if we're talking about the system of racism, then we might be thinking about the individual identities that land within that, and that might be white, Black, Latino, et cetera, right? If we're talking about the system of ableism, the identities that are found in there are if we're able-bodied or if we're differently abled. Those might be individual identities that are wrapped up within this system of ableism. Same thing when we're talking about gender: woman, man, non-binary, trans. These are related to larger systems of oppression like patriarchy, trans antagonism, anti-queerness, heteronormativity. So if I was going to be talking about, if I'm writing to one of those prompts that are asking me to talk about the larger system, those would be the system. And I want to talk about the fact that I'm non-binary, those might be the larger systems that I connect to. And same thing, poor and rich, the larger systems that create those different identities would be classism or capitalism. And so Sarah's going to talk to us next about kind of how we might fold those personal identities or bring out what those personal identities and experiences are, and then leverage that in our DEI statements to talk about how that might be beneficial on a college campus.
Yeah. Thank you, Antoinette. Yeah, so I'm going to be stepping through an exercise that will help us think about what makes us diverse. So within our identities, within who we are, how do we bring that to a college campus in order to foster the kind of inclusive environment that they say that they're looking for? And so we're going to be using this table from College Essay Guide. So I have both the link to College Essay Guide site is linked there, and also the type of exercise that we're doing, which is called If You Really, Really Knew Me, which is also linked there. So we've taken this from this site and adapted it slightly and added it in our own things to kind of give you a step through of what this exercise could look like if you were doing it on your own. So we've got three examples that we've chosen here. So family, we have culture, and we have identities. And so I'm going to step through the family one first. So the first column is if you really, really knew me and my family, you would know. So writing down what the thing that you want people to know, and then why this is important to me. And then the last column is how this might be beneficial on a college campus or a research environment. And so I'm going to go through. Could you send, oh yeah, could we send the link to the document again? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to take one example from this one, go through it. And what I'm hoping is that we can do maybe one example from y'all, like you can just put in, if you can put it in a chat, and I'll ask the question, if you can put in a chat something about your family, and we can think through why this might be important to you, and then how this might be beneficial. So I'll use the example in the middle of I'm a twin and my sister is autistic. Actually, let me just read it out from how it says. If you really, really knew me and my family, you would know that I'm a twin and my sister is autistic. And so for this person, this is important to me because I see normal differently from most people. And then how this might be beneficial on a college campus. So I'm more attuned to neurodiversity and how we can build better environments and programming for neurodiverse people. And this is something that I can bring to the university campus. And so you can see how going from what defines you as part of your family and seeing how it's important to you and thinking through how that might be beneficial can be something that you can directly put into your DEI statement. So I'm hoping that someone
Can we walk through another example? Just
okay.
one more.
Okay, so I can do the next one. So if you really, really knew me and my family, you would know that I'm responsible for helping my parents with their health, which means attending doctor's visits and acting as a translator for my family. And then this is important to me because my parents don't understand the American medical system and need help navigating it. It is important to me that they receive care and that they can rely on me. And then how this might be beneficial to the university campus. I have experience being an advocate for people who need help, which translates to my passion for addressing, you can put in XYZ social issue that you can think of. So we will send this out. We will send out this entire document to people so you don't have to copy it. I mean, if you really want to copy it, you can, but we will send it out as soon as this webinar is over as well. Okay, so I'm hoping that clarifies what we're doing here with this exercise. I mean, I can give another example just using myself, just to help illustrate what I mean. So I come from a family of 7 children, and that's important to me because that's really defined how I've navigated through life. And then the ways that I can think of how this might be beneficial to a college campus is that, like, because I've had to navigate having so many people in the family, I have really strong interpersonal skills now. And because of that, I can now bring this to a college campus when it comes to interacting with different groups of people. And I've also had to be adaptable to different people and different needs because in a household of, nine people, there's a lot of needs and a lot of different perspectives that you have to be able to adapt to. And so that is something that I can also bring to a college campus. So,
And as a side note, that would make Sarah really good, or she can talk about how that might make her really good in a laboratory setting, for instance, where she's having to work really closely with other people. And so she might have good communication skills. She might have good conflict resolution skills. And all of these types of skills would help her to be able to work more effectively on teams. And so you can see how you can kind of translate that experience to how she might be useful in a college campus or a lab.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is going to work. This might not work for this format, but I was hoping that we could get an example in the chat. Like just write anything. It can be related to yourself or whatever you can think of that's related to your family.
And we'll work through this as a team because I know it's like, oh, when it's all laid out in front of me, it's really easy to understand how to do it. And when you really sit down to do it, you're like, wait, I really don't know how to translate it. So we'll work through it together. So if somebody could in the chat say, if you really, really knew me and my family, you would know that whatever it is, it could be an example for yourself, or we can just like make it up. What's one thing that we could say? And we'll give folks a little bit of time because I know it might take a second to write to actually.
Oh, okay, okay. So
Oh
the chat
no,
option.
Q&A.
Okay, so please use the Q&A to answer
Or
that.
I mean, y'all are writing this on this G doc. We can just write it straight in here.
Yeah, you
So
can just
just
write
like
it.
write it there. Love it.
Mhm.
Okay, this is great. So we can go 1 and 2. So let's do the first one, and I'll let Sarah let you walk through that. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm from Colombia. My paternal family is from Armenia, but they're raised in Egypt. My dad's Colombian, and we are a numerous family. And so, yeah, why might that be important to you?
Yeah. So wait,
That's awesome. So I've been used to so this for this person, why this is important to them. I've been used to diversity my entire life and not feeling like I'm in the right country despite being second generation and growing up here. That's great. And then if you how do you think this might be beneficial? Oh yeah, there you go. You're already doing it.
and as a side note, when we say that's great, we want to really just make space for it. That is, it is very difficult, that experience that somebody is talking about. So we're saying that that's great in terms of that's great that you're able to relate to, you're able to describe why it's important to you. Not that it's great that we feel feelings of isolation in these
Yes.
just to be clear.
Okay. So how this is beneficial to a campus or a research environment? I'm used to managing cultural differences and integrating everyone. Yeah, this is great. And especially if you think about it, I'm going to be on a campus where there is going to be people from all different types of cultures and backgrounds, and having this experience where I'm used to being around different people, understanding diversity, I can be of real benefit to the university campus and the research environment. That's great. Thank you so much. Okay. So the next one, do we have time for the next one? I can do this one and then I can skip and go straight to identity.
Yeah, I think let's do this one. We'll walk through culture and then we'll do examples in identity. How about that?
Okay. All right. So I grew up with a strong single mother. Okay. And then why is that important to you? I guess we can work on that together if you wanted to do it together. Okay. I can just like riff off something. Why this might be important to me or to someone who grew up with a strong single mother. It was really important to me to see how my mother navigated sexism within this society.
And I would even expand on that a little bit further and like, why was it important for you to see that? What did you learn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I learned well, I guess like firstly I learned about the ways in which our society can make life difficult for women. Mhm. And should I do more of what I learned or just go straight to?
You can do that. I mean, if that's what's important to you, or maybe you might go, we don't have to do all the options, but like, maybe for me, it's important to me that I grew up with a single strong mother because the value of family is very important to me in supporting my family and supporting those who don't have as much with such a deep cultural value, not just in my family, but in my community. And I
Yeah,
think that that could be beneficial to a college campus
I forgot most. That's all I remember from what you said.
because I'm attuned, let's say, to like folks that are marginalized. I'm attuned to that. So I'm a very good community builder and I'm very good at seeing building bridges for folks that don't have them might be an angle that I would choose. So you can see you can go a million different ways because it's really just about what's important to you about the aspect of your own identity. And then we just are trying to fold that into why that would be useful for a university.
Mhm. Okay, I'm gonna go through the examples. I'm gonna go through. I'm worried about time, so I'm gonna go through two of the examples from culture. And so for culture, if you really, really knew me and my culture, my connection to my culture is a little complicated as I wasn't born in this country and neither were my parents. I feel very, and this is important to me because I feel very connected to my Peruvian roots in some ways, but in other ways, I feel pretty disconnected from it. How this might be beneficial on a college campus or a research environment. I can connect with others who hold multiple cultural identities, and I'm skilled at building communities across cultural backgrounds.
Can we
Okay.
read other examples? Because that's almost what we just said.
Yeah.
Like a few different ones.
I mean, the family values one is also pretty similar. Do you want me to do the family values one? Yeah. So family values, if you really, really knew me and my culture, you would know that family values are incredibly important to my culture. And this is important to me because the importance of family has been instilled in me since I was a child, and it's a large motivation for why I continue my education. This will be beneficial in a college campus or a research environment because I've juggled many personal responsibilities while attending school by polishing my time management and organizational skills. These skills transfer over to a scientific project management and just to research in general as well. Okay, and then
We highlight that one as important, I think, at least I think for us, because a lot of the times when we're applying to these schools, for a lot of folks who are in marginalized communities, we had to take on more than other folks. And in order to take on more than other folks, you probably have a resiliency and an adaptability that you can really highlight in your application. You might be really good at time management because I had to pick up two kids and hold two jobs and go to this and go to university. And so like my time management skills are actually like off the chain. Like I'm really, really good. Or my organizational skills are really, really good. And all those are transferable skills in a program. And so the things that your experiences are an asset to this program. We just have to figure out how to freak it and make it like clear. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we highlight that one.
Mhm. Okay, and then so I think someone wrote this in. I was born and raised in a small Latin American country, did my undergraduate in Canada and moved to the US to pursue post-bac research opportunity. So why this might be important to you?
We'll give you a second if you can think of, for the person who wrote it, can you think of why that might be important to you? Why does it feel like I care about that? If the question that somebody would ask me is, so what? Then it's like, well, so what? Obviously, I care about it because of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're struggling, we can try and think of something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was you. I was born in, did my undergraduate and moved to the US.
Ah,
Oh, there you are. think you're done. Okay. So it's important to me to have navigated multiple contradicting cultures to continue pursuing a research experience. Yeah.
Contradicting cultures. I like that.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's very good. And I think what just comes up for me so quickly is just like this idea that I can manage conflict.
Mm-hmm. And you've got, yeah, so it has cultural competency. So that could be the cultural competency, could be a way for you to write that as to like how that is beneficial to a university campus. So this gives me cultural competencies because I have had to navigate across these different these contradicting cultures. Yeah, and also gives me good conflict management skills as well. It's awesome. Okay, and then I'm just going to read out some examples from my identities, just in the interest of time, and then we'll move on to the next part. And I've also provided links here as to if you wanted to get more help thinking about what your identities could be. And identity is really what defines you. You know, so for me, my identity, an identity that defines me is that I am a Black woman. That is one of my identities. So I'll read one example. So if you really, really knew me and my identities, you would know that I'm a Black man. And this is important to me because the value of making a positive impact for my community was instilled in me at a young age. And this is beneficial to a college campus or a research environment because I am motivated to continue my education in order to remove barriers for others like me. Okay. And so you can see, hopefully, with that exercise, you can see how you can use different parts of yourself and why they're important to you, and start to think about how that might translate to a university or research environment campus, because the parts of yourself, the things that make you you, are so integral to how our society works and our society can benefit, because you just being you is beneficial in our society. And so, I think sometimes it feels like you need to have done all of these things, have had all these experiences in order to feel like you can be of benefit. But you and your experiences that you have and your uniqueness is of benefit. We're really just hoping that this exercise can help you to start to think about how it's beneficial.
Okay. So it is kind of easy to answer this question. If you really, really knew me, you would know woo-de-woo, right? That's not too difficult. But we can kind of get stuck in this place of translating it to why that's important to me, or even more difficult can be how this might benefit a college campus or research environment. That can be difficult. And so what we want to do is tell you a little bit about a cheat sheet. So I do not recommend using ChatGPT or any other AI to write your statements for you. I'm on admissions committees. People can tell when folks have used AI to write parts of your application. Don't do it. However, my little asterisk is that you can use ChatGPT or other AI models to help you think about what you might write in these statements. I feel like that's fair game. Other people might feel differently, but other people aren't doing the webinar. So here's how that might look. So let's say this is my input, right? I'm like, okay, cool. I'm writing this DEI statement for a graduate program in neuroscience. I know folks aren't necessarily going to neuroscience programs, but this is just an example. And I'm supposed to talk about how my experiences will be of benefit to the college campus or program. Family values are really important to my culture, and the importance of family has been instilled to me since I was a kid, and it's why I continue my education. So just give me a list of ideas about how my experience and cultural background might be useful on a college campus or grad program. Okay, so here are some ideas that I might think about how to do that last column. I have some cultural awareness. I might be good at mentorship, like serving as a mentor from folks from other backgrounds. I might be really good at community building. I have research perspectives that are different than what other folks are coming in with, and I can kind of bridge the types of research. So like, let's say I know that there's a lab that's researching cannabinoid receptors, and my community has really been affected on like the war on drugs, And so I have this perspective of not just why is this cannabinoid receptor important, but like I have this cultural connection to like a policy that's linked to this research. And so I can bring that in. I'm interested in advocacy, and so I can help promote that on campus. I appreciate different types of different cultures, and I am able to collaborate across them. And I think that that's a transferable skill to cross-disciplinary collaboration. And so you get the point. And so if you're really having a hard time coming up with stuff, I would recommend using ChatGPT or another AI just to help you generate ideas. Don't use it to write your stuff, but you can use it to help you generate ideas if you're really feeling stuck. Okay. So let's get into the different types of prompts that exist. So this is also coming from that source. It's been altered from that source that Sarah talked about in the beginning, that college guy website that we linked above. He surveyed 75 programs across the US and kind of categorized the prompts into these three major categories. It's either the prompt is asking you about an experience or conversation with someone who's different than you, how you'll contribute to a college campus based on your background or identities, or it's asking more about larger societal or community issues. So let's just start with the experience or conversations with someone that's different than you. Okay. So when we're talking about this type of prompt is asking you this question about how do you deal with difference and grow from it. So the difference could be different opinions, different cultures, different types of people, whatever. They're just asking you about how you deal with difference, and then most importantly, how you used that difference or that experience that you went through and grew from it. That's really important there. So I'll read two examples of those types of prompts. And I'm pretty sure all these prompts are sourced from 2024, or I think it was from this application year. If it wasn't this application year, it was the one right before. Vanderbilt University values learning through contrasting points of view. That's our first clue that it's in this category of prompt. We understand that our differences, another clue that it's this type of prompt, and our respect for alternative views and voices are our greatest source of strength. Please reflect on conversations that you've had with people who express different viewpoints from your own. How did these conversations or experiences influence your own? And another prompt, as an example from Princeton, shared time when you had a conversation with a person or group about a difficult topic. What insights did you gain, and how will you incorporate that knowledge in the future? We have this scale here at the top that's like indirect to direct. When we're talking about DEI statements, some universities are really indirectly talking about actual issues related to DEI, right? So they're not talking about equity issues. And this type of prompt, this experience or conversation with someone different, they could be talking about a difference in whose football team you like, or if you should have pineapple on pizzas. Like, it's not really necessarily having to talk about DEI. And so if you wanted to talk about just a difference in contrasting viewpoints and it's unrelated to DEI, you could, because the prompt isn't necessarily asking about DEI. But as you'll see, as we go further over towards the more direct, it's really starting to bring in those like identities connected to larger issues. So in that middle category, how will you contribute to our college campus or graduate program based on your background, experiences, or identities? This type of prompt is really asking you more specifically about your background, identities, or experiences that give you that unique perspective. So it's really related to those prompts that we were talking about above. But you can use those prompts that we talked about above, or those tables that we talked about above, to answer any of these questions. And when I'm done with this table, I'll show you kind of how to do that. So this middle category, as an example, at Penn, learning and growth happens outside of the classroom too. How will you explore the community at Penn? Consider how this community will help shape your perspective and identity, and how your identity and perspective will help shape this community. So it's really about perspective, really about identity, and really about how you're going to benefit our campus. Harvard is another one that falls into this middle category. Harvard has long recognized the importance of enrolling a diverse student body. How will the life experiences that shape how will the life experience that shape who you are today enable you to contribute to Harvard? And the last category of prompt is, are these prompts that are connected to these like larger issues? And so they're typically asking you about what the larger issue is that you care about, and then your interest in helping address it. So this prompt comes from our program at Oregon Health and Science University. In 350 words or less, what role could scientists play in addressing societal issues caused by systems of oppression? As a graduate student, what do you think your role can be, and what actions could you take to address societal issues either inside or outside of the university? So it's connected to this larger system, right? Another example, reflect on a social or community issue that resonates deeply with you. Why is it important, and how have you been involved in addressing or raising awareness about it? And that's from Boston. And so, an example of how I might use what I came up with in the table to answer any of these prompts. Let's just go with uh, let's go with this one. So my connection to my culture is a little complicated because I wasn't born in this country and I have Peruvian roots, but I feel sometimes disconnected from it. So in this, I might be able to talk about a difficult conversation or experience that I had, and why I think that would be important for the college campus, which is basically what this is asking from, how I think I grew from that conversation. So um, I could also talk about more, like, obviously in this category, that table directly aligns with this type of prompt in the middle, how my Peruvian background, living in this country and feeling a conflict with that is a unique benefit to the university. Or I could talk about the larger issue, the larger societal issue about, like, why is it that I feel outside of my culture? I might be talking about larger systems of racism, or I might be talking about systems of colonization, or whatever it is. I might be talking about larger systems in this prompt. So you can take those tables that we walked through earlier and just use it as a thought exercise for yourself about, like, okay, these are the types of things I can talk about. And then you apply it to any of the types of prompts. You likely will not be able to take one DEI statement and use it for every application, because applications are asking you different things. And as a pro tip, if you do that, that's going to look bad, especially if you're using an application that like had a totally different prompt. It's very obvious to the reviewers. They're like, oh yeah, they didn't even read our prompt. So don't do that. That is like a common thing that I see every single year, and it always hurts you. So make sure you're paying attention to what the prompt is. All DEI statement prompts are not created equally, or they're not asking you the same thing.
Okay. So I'm going to, for this last bit before we get to the Q&A, go through each of these type of prompts, and then we've written out an outline of how you can set it up within your, when you're writing it. So starting out with the experience or conversation with someone who is different from you. So this type of prompt is asking you again, how you deal with differences. So opinions, different types of people, and how, and more importantly, how you grow from it. So in this prompt, we start out with describing the situation where the difference occurred. So give a description of that. And then you describe how you navigated this difference or this conversation. And then you describe what you learned about navigating that difference and how you can apply that to how you can apply the lessons that you learned to your grad school, to the university, to the program. So I can think of an example of using one of the examples that we had above of the person that's a twin and they have an autistic sister. So maybe for that example, if you're using that example, or if that is what I was using, you could say the situation where the difference occurred. Maybe you had someone told that person that everyone thinks they're autistics now, and like autism is not it's not really a big deal. People just don't have good work ethic. And like that is the situation. I say this specifically because this is a thing that I've unfortunately seen on social media, and so that's how that's what brought me to this example. And then so for that example, you can describe that's where the difference occurred, and then you can describe how you navigated that conversation. So that conversation for this person, I needed to really be patient and explain to them that I have a sister who is autistic. Autism is very real, and it's something that affects a lot of people, and just like going through that, and then describing what you learned. So maybe something you learn is that I learned that this is like, I will be met with resistance when it comes to neurodiversity. And I learned that when I have these conversations with people, I have to, I have to be patient, or I have to be, whatever it is that you learn, and then how you can apply that to the university. So like these conversations made me aware of how important it is that, we have more education surrounding neurodiversity. And when I come to university, this is something that I want to do. This is an
Or
example.
maybe I also might not say, like, if I feel a type of way of saying, I actually don't want to say that I have to be patient with people, I think that that's fair. And so you also don't have to say that. I think you could just say that, like, it's very clear that people need more educational opportunities. And I could be part of an organization that asks for those educational opportunities to be brought to our campus.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, and then so the next one, how will you contribute to our college campus and graduate program based on your background, experiences, and identities? And so this prompt, like Antoinette said, is really asking you how your background, experiences, and identity gives you a unique perspective that can be beneficial to our campus or our community. So with that, you can start with a description of your background, your experience, or identity that gives you the unique perspective. And then you can also write in a moment or situation that represents that and why it's important to you. And then a description of how you will bring that to the campus. And again, with this and also with the above, make sure that when you're talking about campus, you make it specific to the place that you're applying to. And then with this prompt, we just added in, sometimes this can be a question that can be asked. You can get asked, what actions have you taken, or what actions will you take in the future? So this is an opportunity for you to find a way to relate your background, experiences, and identities to an action. So we have an example here of, I'm a Latina and care about increasing representation in science. And so I plan to join XYZ program to volunteer to teach science at Hispanic serving elementary schools, as an example.
And when we say XYZ vote program, it's really important, again, that you're making things campus specific or program specific, um, because it helps tell the admissions committee that you actually looked at their university rather than just copy and pasted that statement. So it can be really helpful to get campus specific.
Yeah, because it's really important to university or reviewers that you care about their program and that you want to be at their program. And one way that they can sort of like assess that is if you're actually writing and paying attention to the things that they've asked you to do. Okay, and then the last prompt, which is the society or community issue. So this prompt is asking you for your understanding of larger societal issues and also having an interest in addressing them. So that one, you start with your understanding of the larger issue, why you personally care about this larger issue, and then the actions that you've already taken, so things that you've done in the past, or things that you can do or you will be doing to positively impact this problem. And then the final thing is describing how you would make that of benefit to the campus. So using an example of I'm a twin, my sister has autism. You can talk about it. So for this person, they might talk about neurodiversity as the larger problem, why they personally care about it in relation to having a sister that has experienced this, the actions that they've taken, maybe they've been part of programs in the past, or maybe they want to join programs in order to increase awareness about autism, about neurodiversity in general. And then the description of how they'll bring it to the campus. They can make it specific to the campus. Like, I'm going to join this program on campus that's already available, or I'm going to, go outside of campus and join this thing that is happening within the city that I'm going to be in. Hopefully that clears it up. Okay.
So a few things before we get to questions that are just kind of coming up for me. One concern that I know I had as a student, I know other students have, is like, I'm not trying to, I feel a type of way. I feel uncomfortable with putting the things that have caused my family trauma on display for other people to like evaluate if it's good enough as their DEI. And I feel that. And so what I would like to offer is that as we go through these things, although these things can be connected to trauma, right? Like, um, let's just take it here. If I have parents that needed help navigating the American medical system, there's like multiple systems of oppression that are connected to that and can be a real source of trauma. It could be a medical trauma, it could be class trauma, it could be any of those types of things, right? So maybe I feel uncomfortable with it. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. There are so many aspects of who you are and what makes you unique. You can choose any of those things. You don't have to talk about the thing that like hurts the most or that you don't want to give these folks. That's one thing. And two, although we are folks who experience systemic oppression, um, there's this like concept that I like, and it's about thinking about like the gifts of our intergenerational trauma. Although I experienced intergenerational trauma, it also gives me this gift because I have this lens through which I see the world, and I know the places that I think I can have an impact to make the world a better place. And what a beautiful superpower that is for me. And so that's kind of like one way that you can think about sort of that issue. And the last thing that I'll say before we get to the questions, when I was a student, I was really interested in DEI issues. I mean, I'm still very interested in it. But when I was a student, I was like, I really want to go to a university that cares about the things that I care about. How do I evaluate if a university cares about the thing that I care about? It's not super easy because everybody and their mama say they care about DEI issues. And so it's kind of hard to say, it's like kind of hard to tell if they're real about it or if they're not. And so if that's something that is of importance to you, I would do two things, or I would look for hints. One place that you can look for a hint is in the DEI statement prompt itself. And so if I'm looking at these prompts, because I could be talking about toppings on a pizza over here on the indirect side, and over here I'm talking about issues that are like really related to systemic oppression, the campus on the right side might be more like not afraid to talk about the things that are important to me, where the campus on the left side might be a little more hesitant. And so that's not to say that all the things on the right side are going to be like, oh, that's going to be a place that's super inclusive. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about hints, because it's possible that you have a program that's doing this on the left side and the environment is not great, or a program that's doing this on the right, I might have mixed up my left and right, but you know what I'm saying? The ones over on the left might actually be ones that care about the issues, but they just haven't updated their prompts. So I would just take that as a hint. And the other thing that I would just want to offer as students that are going to be evaluating programs and determining if you want to go to their campus and join that program, I always give this word of advice because I wish somebody would have told me this. I think that everyone told me when I was an undergrad that the most important thing that I need to look for is to make sure that the research that a campus or that a program is doing is exciting to me. And as a student who used that metric and then had a really difficult time in grad school, I don't feel that way anymore. I actually think, and people can disagree with me if they want, but I actually think that the purpose of going to graduate school is to learn how to become a better scientist, right? Or a better whatever it is you're going to grad school for. And I think that almost every program can teach you how to do that. Every program can give you science skills. Every program can give you whatever skill that you're trying to go to that program to build. I think what makes a difference in your experience is what the environment is. If I don't like the environment, it's very difficult for me to want to go to school every day to learn those skills. And so I really want to offer that look at the program, look at the science, all of those types of things, but really ask the program and their students two important questions. In what way do you support your students? Or if you're asking the students, in what way do you feel supported by your program? And then the other question is, in what way do you feel like you could support your students better? To the students, in what way do you feel like your program could support you better? I didn't ask, do you feel supported? I said, in what way? So that we can get some specifics that you can get information from. And that gives you an idea about the environment, about that inclusion and belonging piece. And so I think that that's just as important, if not more important, than the science or whatever it is that you're like primarily there to do. Okay. Questions from the chat. Sarah, do you want to take the first question?
Yeah, so we have a question. Is this the one about the region? Let me just read it out. Okay, so the question was, can you be specific about the region that the campus is in? And I think the person was saying, how can we make something campus specific in terms of personalizing it differently for each campus. I would like clarification or examples of this. Would it be noting a specific program in the universities? What should we include if they don't offer these programs? Yeah. Yeah. So if they have specific programs at the universities that you would be interested in joining, yeah, definitely state that, because that is an example of how you make something specific to the program. If they don't have any of the type of programs that you would be looking to do, you can try looking to see if the city that you're in might have some things. So for example, we're in Portland, other things, and maybe I want to do stuff with high school students, like in terms of going to high school students and teaching them about science or talking to them about science. And the university I'm at doesn't have a program like that, but are there like organizations in Portland that have something like that? And is that something that I can state as being interested in? Yeah, hopefully that helps.
The program website hopefully says what efforts they're doing to kind of like address DEI. Most don't, but maybe you might find some groups there. You might have student interest groups that you find on that campus. So like for us, we have a SOCNIS chapter that that you might be interested in. So you might find that there. Most universities have, this is not all universities because of recent legislation, but most universities have some type of DEI center, some kind of like multicultural center. And that could be a good place for you to find groups or efforts that you can kind of help weave into your statement as well.
Okay, and then we have questions in the Q&A. Okay, great. That's great.
I don't know how to get there.
The Q&A? There should be a link to the Q&A like next to the chat.
Oh, okay.
Can you see it? I can read out the first one. So how has the recent Supreme Court decision on college admissions having race as a factor affected the DEI statement? Have universities removed it, reworded it? Are they looking at other data pieces an application may provide? So i.e., I'm talking about being a Mexican, a nationality, not a race, as opposed to referring to myself as being brown, Latinx, etc. So like I'm guessing from this you're saying, is it better for me to say that I'm Mexican, not that I'm Latinx or brown? Do you want to take that?
Yeah. Okay. So let me try to do it really brief. Okay. So the Supreme Court decision and how that's affected college admissions. So it's a little complicated, but basically the recent Supreme Court decision said that race cannot be used as a factor in admissions. However, people can talk about how their race or their experience in this racialized system, or their experience, for instance, as a Mexican or whatever, like any other group, how that experience is has helped shaped them. And for instance, how that could be a benefit to the college campus. You can still write that, and admissions committees are still allowed to use that piece of information. What they are not allowed to do now is look at your application, look at two applicants that are similar in terms of being qualified for admission, and then give kind of like an extra point for two folks who have had some type of marginalized or oppressed like experience because of these systems of oppression. It was never legal to just let POCs or whatever in that were not qualified to get in. But now, because they've removed this equity piece, we are not allowed to by itself consider like race as a category, is what that means for us. That's what it means for the Supreme Court. What states have done individually is somewhat different. So there are certain states that like do not basically let you say any type of race. And in America, they do not make a distinction between, because I won't go into it, but like basically, I don't think that they'll really. You would have to have a pretty educated admissions committee to understand the difference between, in my opinion, to understand the difference between like race and nationality, because in the US we combine everything because it's a race nation. And so I don't think that it would necessarily like but either way, I think you can talk about being Mexican and having this Mexican identity and how that's helped shaped you. And I don't think that you will get like hurt in your application by doing that, because you still are allowed to say that, and they are still allowed to use that as a factor in admissions. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, sounds good. At least for me. So the next question is, how do you frame ongoing struggles, i.e. disability or chronic illness, as a benefit for a research environment without minimizing the real impacts that it has on your life and your ability to be productive at a normal level?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, well, one, I wouldn't minimize the impact. Like, that is your real life. And so that the benefit, like the superpower, in my opinion, like within that, is that there are other people on that college campus that either experience a disability right now or will experience a disability in the future. And like having people in the community that understand that perspective is a benefit to our community, because not only do y'all like know where the gaps are in our policy, in the way that we like accommodate for time off, in the way that we have like work from home flexibility, but you also are like a valuable community member in terms of providing support. So like you make our campus better by helping us understand the gaps and helping us actually truly become an inclusive, if we respond to your needs well, then you help us like identify the gaps that we wouldn't see as like able-bodied people or people without a chronic disability. But just because somebody doesn't have any of those things right now doesn't mean that they won't. And so you are of like huge benefit to us to be able to make our environment better if we listen to your needs, and also provide community for other people. So I wouldn't minimize like the impact that that's had on your life, because that's real. Hope that that's helpful.
Okay. All right. So next one, try and get to everything if we can. How can you talk about social/community issues relevant to you without self-disclosing in an excessive way? For example, I'm a survivor and I volunteer at a survivors support center, and I'm engaged in women's issues activities, say classes and research. My question is there a right way to talk about these things in the application? Thank you so much.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's So this is like a very common question, because that's that like, how much of myself do I self-disclose? And how much do I personally feel comfortable with these folks knowing about like my own personal story? So I would first start there. If you don't feel comfortable telling them folks your personal story in that way, what you can do, and I've done this in applications before, I've talked about working with somebody that's had a similar experience to me. And to keep it a buck, to be honest with you, I've made up these people. Like I just said, like this person existed and I worked with them and this issue was really important to them. And I care about this too, because I think it's important that people are able to whoop de whoop, right? And so like you can depersonalize it, and no one is gonna know that you depersonalized that story, so that you can still talk about like that issue that's really important to you. If you feel comfortable talking about that issue that's important to you, and your experience with that, you can. Um, my only like asterisk with that is that if your experience or your political view or whatever is like so far from the status quo, that they would like consider you to be too radical, then I would be careful with that, because you don't know who's on these admissions committees.
Yeah,
So
well, sorry, internet. I was
that's
just like, well, you're heading towards an answer a question that's already been asked, which is, are there topics that we should avoid discussing, i.e. Palestine, since I've heard about students getting punished for joining protests and where did the question go, and strikes. But I
good.
was heading.
I'm glad that that gets wrapped up in here. In my opinion, you have two choices. So I hope that answered the question about like it's gone now, but I hope that answered the question about like being a survivor. You can choose what you want to disclose, and then you can depersonalize it if it feels too personal to you. When it comes to topics to avoid, I think all of us, whether you're doing this now for your application, or you're doing this for the type of job that you want to be in, or you're doing this for whatever environment you're wanting to be in, we have to make personal decisions about who we show up as. Some of us, so if I'm pro-Palestinian, if I'm pro-Palestine, I'm like, yeah, I'm with that. We would have to make a decision about, we would have to know, number one, that this committee could be made up of whomever. And we don't know who we might like upset on that committee, which means that if we disclose this piece of ourselves, that committee could use that to not admit us. And we might never not ever know, because that is how systemic oppression is structured inside of institutions. And so we have to make a personal decision. Either I'm choosing that I'm going to disclose, or I'm not going to disclose that because I want to increase my chances of getting in. Or I'm choosing, if this university or program isn't with the thing I'm saying, that's not the right space for me anyways. And that's a personal decision, and one that I can't tell you kind of how you want to navigate that, because it's just like really up to you and what your values are. And so my only advice there is know the truth, know that those folks can decide to withhold admission if they don't like your viewpoint. That is how structural oppression is formalized in institutions. That's possible. So use that information to make an informed decision about what's right for you and your own values and kind of your own goals. I hope that that answers that question for you. Okay.
I know we're at time, but if it's okay with the organizers, we could stick around and answer a few more questions.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the next question is, how can I get over the feeling that I'm trying to make my life seem so hard and I'm begging for opportunities?
Let me tell you something. This world is inequitable. And in my opinion, like, we take every opportunity that we can get because we are already facing so many barriers. So I know folks feel like this if they're applying for, let's say, like grants for DEI grants, and they're like, oh, I just don't really want to I don't want to have a handout. I need a handout. Give me that thing, because I'm already in this inequitable system. And so, like, I'm trying to get the things that are helping create the equity. And so saying the thing that you experienced is not asking for an opportunity or begging for a handout. You're saying your superpower that you would leverage in this campus. It is not begging. We're talking about what's making you special and unique and what you can be as a benefit to our campus. Like, we should be saying how we are like interested in you. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Go ahead,
yeah.
Sarah.
I was gonna say, I mean, and that's why the universities are asking these questions, because they know that. They know that your unique perspectives, your unique experiences are a benefit to them. And really, I mean, it's, to me, the way this kind of works is like it works in a kind of backwards way, that the expectation that you should be coming in and making things better rather than the universities making things better on their own accord. But that is not you begging, because there is a benefit to them that they're trying to get from you. So you are not begging for it. They know that this is beneficial, and you are telling them how it will be beneficial to them.
That's absolutely true. You absolutely are not begging for opportunities. And if there are things about your experience that has been hard, that's valid. Like, that's for real your experience. I have experienced things in my own life that made that thing hard. And like, I learned from it, I persevered through that thing, I grew from it. I have this lens that like y'all want. And so like, it is not, it's like not a sob story. That is your real experience, and we can own that with like honor and like, I don't want to say pride that we like had to deal with these systems, but like, I don't want to curse here, but like, we're pretty bad, something, a word that for like having gone through those experiences and persevered that, because like our experience is unlike other people's. So I would really try to think about these things not like you're, oh, poor me, my life is so hard. That's real. And that perspective is exactly what they're wanting to know, how they can like benefit from that. I hope that that's okay.
And then the next question, so for my personal statement, I wanted to include an example of how I'm a first generation student instead of blatantly stating it. Would that be okay? Just stating first generation over and over again feels too repetitive to me. I think you should be able to state that. I'm not exactly sure what you mean. You should be able to state that I am a first generation student and therefore these things are important to me. I think if you said that within the first paragraph of your personal statement, you wouldn't need to repeat that again.
Yeah, then the focus is just like, why is it important to me?
Yeah, yeah.
What is it? What's my special superpower within that?
Mhm.
And if you didn't want to say that you're a first generation student, again, like we can depersonalize this. If it's like, yeah, I hear everything that Antoinette and Sarah are saying, but like I'm still not trying to say that. You don't have to depersonalize it and say why you think making opportunities for first generation students is important or whatever it is, like that angle of why you think it's important. It don't have to be about you. It can just be you have this perspective that you think is important. It doesn't have to be personal disclosure.
Mhm. Okay, and then the next question. Hi. How can I talk about having intersecting marginalized identities? For example, my personal identities are LGBTQ, Latinx, and brown, immigrant, and woman.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
So go ahead, Sarah. There you go.
no, you go.
No, I've talked a lot. You go. You can do it.
um, I mean, I think depending on if you want to disclose all of those identities, I think you can. You can say that I am a member of like having all these intersections, being a member of the LGBTQ community, being a Latinx brown person and an immigrant and a woman has given me these experiences and given me these intersections. And so if you're willing to disclose all of those identities, I think you can. And just talking about it in terms of this intersection has given me these unique perspectives. So it's not just that I'm like one of each of these things. It's like the intersection of being all of these things and the compounding effect of being all of these things has given me these unique perspectives and experiences and how that will be of benefit.
Yeah. So the question is because because I have this unique intersectional identity, what is my like unique perspective or my superpower within that? How does that make me more able to solve problems, to see the gaps, to like what is it about those perspectives that I think is unique? If I was going to be writing that and I have all of these identities and I'm at this particular intersection, that might mean that I understand that for like immigrant communities that come from these regions, they already face these issues, and then I understand that when it's compounded by these other systems like patriarchy or like anti-queerness, that makes it even more difficult for them, and this is the way that manifests. I have a lens for that, so that may be like an angle that I would consider taking if that's sort of the if you really want to talk about that intersectional identity.
Mhm. And then the next question, does talking about mental health problems would be considered negative as many people in academia do still have a stigma? So
Hmm.
yeah, that's a good question.
Here's so I'm going to be as real as I can be because that's how I try to show up in every space. And I don't like what I'm about to say because I think it's BS. But I have been on like in spaces where I've watched mental health being stigmatized and watched people question, oh, if they struggled with depression and anxiety, I wonder if they would like be ready for graduate school and like the difficulty of graduate school. I don't agree with it. It's ableist. Like it is another way that we structure oppression into this process. And so like that's real. If I'm going to talk about mental health issues that I've experienced in academia, or I'm sorry, if I'm going to be talking about mental health issues that I've experienced, the angle that I would try to put it as so that their stigma doesn't um like trip you up would be I went through this thing and here's this like way that I grew from it. Or I went through this thing and this is what I've done to like manage that. And this gives me this unique perspective of like that experience of going through these depths. So I can say it for myself. I struggled with depression and anxiety in graduate school. And I was at the lowest point that I've ever been in my life when I was in graduate school. And I was able to get help from my community to connect me to resources to pull me out of that space. And I was able to do this, and this. And now that gives me a lens to understand how critically important it is for us to be having conversations about mental health within graduate school because I know it's something that other people struggle with. And so now I create resources around it. Now I have critical conversations with faculty about it, blah, 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 blah. And so you can kind of hear the way that I took this thing that it was difficult for me to deal with and then like how I adapted and persevered and what I needed to do that, and then how I can contribute to a campus because of that. But I would really put like that asterisk on there that you have to do it in that way, because I would be afraid that they would stigmatize, like that there are people, we're talking about universities all across America, right? So there's a lot of individuals there. And I think that that stigma still exists. So if I was going to do it, I would kind of freak it like that.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm getting a little worried about time. I know we're way over time, so I want to make sure that we respect the organizers. I think we have a question that will stand at 3:09. I think once we get to that question, I'm going to end it because I don't want us to be here. I just want to be respectful of people's time. Okay, so the next question is, if you have multiple identities, values, life experiences you want to mention, does it help to focus on one in a diversity statement or provide this multitude, briefly showing how each prepare you as a prospective graduate student? I think, because I think for most universities there is a word count. There's usually a word count or an amount that they want you to say, or they're like a size that they want you to stick to. And so if you think that you can providing all these things, okay, please just stop sharing. Okay. Writing to all of these things will fit within the word count, and you think you'll be able to describe it in a way where, like we said, it shows, why it's important to you. It shows you how, it shows them how it's going to be beneficial to the universities. I would say absolutely do that, but just be mindful of the word count, because once you get past the word count, the reviewers know that, and that can impact how they feel about your, whatever it is that you've written. So if you have a small word count, then maybe it's better to focus on one identity and just explain that. But if you have the space to write to all the different things that you want to write to, then I'll say you can do that too.
And it might be easier just to pick like one or two just structurally when you're thinking about how to write it. If you can figure out how to like weave multiple things in, then that could be cool and like very unique, but that might just be difficult to write. And to be honest, you have so many applications that you might be writing that like, if it was me, I'd probably just like do the path of least resistance and do the thing that's like a little bit easier for me to figure out how to put together in a statement.
And then Antoinette, so Jose asked in the chat if we could drop our email. I just remembered I should tell you that just in case they're no longer here. So I've written mine. And while you do that, okay, let me read out the next question. If my research interests are around culture, / I've come to this research interest because of my identity that I talk about in my research statement, how do I differentiate my research statement from my DEI statement? That's a good question.
Good question. I'm gonna think about that. There's probably, so if I was gonna do this, and then Sarah, maybe you have a different idea. But if I was gonna try to figure this out, I have this research interest that's interested, I'm sorry, I have this research interest that was brought to me because of my culture. Then, so in your statement, in your research statement, probably your top paragraph is that one that's talking about that specifically. So like my research interest, I was motivated to answer these types of questions because of this, because of my culture. In your DEI statement, so that's really talking about the type of research that you want to do. In my DEI statement, that would look a little different because I can still talk about how that cultural identity is like part of me. But in my DEI statement, I'm talking about a difficult conversation that I had, or I'm talking about how my culture connects to what I could bring to this campus. So you're going to do it beyond the research. It's going to be broader than that. Or it's talking about my cultural experience and how that's connected to a larger system of oppression, or like a larger system or larger community issue. So I think the difference there is going to be talking about the research interest in the research statement, or it's going to be talking about those three categories within that. You're still talking about how your culture influences each one of those, but you're like talking about the purpose of each of them is different. Research, or kind of like what I can bring to the community, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Okay, I'll read out the next one. What if you're worried about feeling disingenuous, relating your identity to oppression / struggles, when despite our historically marginalized identities, we've felt well supported in our pursuits because of our specific situations? So, for example, a family role model who was able to have, who was also from a marginalized community, but succeeded in STEM, lots of educational access, etc. Is it better to consider ways that we haven't considered that we've been marginalized just as a product of our identity? or to explain that we appreciate the support that we've had, but our identity helps us recognize the struggles of others and want to support them.
What would move me as a reviewer is the last thing. That's what would move me as a reviewer. You can choose to do whichever one you want, but I don't think we don't have to have experience with a particular group's marginalization to care about it. Like, I am US born and I still very deeply care about like issues that folks who are not experienced here and in other nations. I um I'm trying to think of a different one that I don't have experience with. But my point is that like you don't have to have personal experience with any one thing to care about it. I just care about it because I care about like the struggle of other people. And
Mhm.
so I think that you could choose to say that like, and we can choose to do this with any of the things, by the way. We don't have to actually have like personal experience with that thing to say that we care about that thing. And so I actually think, to me, it's like even more dope when people don't have experience with that thing and say that they still care about it. Because then that means that you're coming from like a more privileged position and still care about it. And
Mhm.
so I think that like if I was gonna do it, like I would maybe freak it like that, because I feel like that's a different lens that people don't usually take. And it's one that's just as important because the allies have a huge role in addressing like these systems of oppression, right? And so I think that could be dope.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, and the last question that we're gonna do today: how can I get over from the feeling of fear to get in a new community as an international student and very introverted person? Yeah, I'm an international person. I'm not from the US. I had to come here. I came here from Australia, so I can relate. I am not an introvert, but I can still relate to that fear. And like, firstly, that fear is valid. Um, that fear is very valid. Like going into a new country, and going into a new community, even if you're going into a different state within the same country, that's hard enough. But going into a new country, having to be ready to face different cultural values, just like having to be different within a new country is very hard. And that fear that you're feeling is very, very valid and very, very understandable. I think for me, that's something that helped me is to think about how I want to build community. What kind of communities do I want to be a part of? And how do I find those communities for myself? Um, I can understand as an introverted person, like going into a new space, even if it is like, if you wanted to go into a space where it's like a student interest groups for people, for other international students, which might exist in whatever university that you go to, there might be a student interest group for international students or other people like you. So, but even with that, even if you're going into that and you're like aware that other people that are going to be there are also international, there's still the fear of just like putting yourself out there as someone who may not be too comfortable in social spaces. I will say that when it comes to doing that, there is a little bit of taking yourself out of your comfort zone. I don't know how to say that you don't have to, because I think no matter what you're going to have to do a little bit of that. But like how much that you take yourself out of your comfort zone is up to you. So you don't have to maybe attend every event, but maybe try to go to one event once in a while and just see and try to build connections with people that way.
And a different way to do it too might be like find one person that you connect with,
Mhm.
that you could be like, yo, you want to come to this thing with me? Like, yeah, you might not be international, but like, would you still come to this thing with me? You can learn about some different stuff. You can meet some different people. And usually in these spaces, people are like, what? You're not international? Get out of here. Like oftentimes you can ask if that's the vibe in that place. Like, oh, is it cool if people who are non-international come into this space? And you might find that it's okay, and it might feel more comfortable to bring at least one friend that you've made into that space while you're like getting to know other people. That could be.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So that's all the questions. We are very, very over time.
Wow. Well, I would just like to say that was so helpful, so insightful. Thank you guys so much. Any further questions that people have, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Foster or Dr. Kissiwaa. Thank you guys again for taking time out of your busy, busy days. That was wonderful.
That's lovely. And so we'll send the G doc. I mean, y'all have the link, so you can just keep the G-Doc yourself, but we'll also send a PDF version of it out. I think Denisha or Roberto can send that out for us, and so you can have access to it there. And I put our email addresses in that doc, so you don't have to.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Awesome. Yay, thank you all so much. Oh, I'm so happy it was helpful. Thank you all.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.